Good evening, folks. It's Freddie Vasquez. This is Basement Politics Unfiltered. Tonight, Anthony DiMaggio, part 4 of our interview. Join me. Good evening, folks. I'm Freddie Vasquez. This is Basement Politics Unfiltered. Happy Friday. Today is September 16, 2022. I have a guest, Anthony DiMaggio, back on for part 4 of my interview with the Yonkers former police lieutenant. Help me welcome Anthony DiMaggio. Good evening, man. How you doing?
How you doing, Fred?
Coordinated a little bit with the white. You know,
we did not plan that.
No, absolutely not. Anyway, how's it going? How's your week been?
Good.
Happy to have you back on part 4 of the interview with Anthony DiMaggio, former police, Yonkers police lieutenant. If you haven't seen the episodes before, was fired or wrongfully fired from the police department after 15 years. And we've been talking about that, and we're going to get into some more stuff today. You're going to talk a little bit about a few things about the deposition with Mueller and the Mueller and Olson lawsuit against Hezi Harris of the Yonkers Tribune, which is interesting because Hezi Harris is another media guy here in the city of Yonkers. Today, I got into it with another media guy, Yonkers Voice, earlier when he spotted me. You know, I honestly, genuinely, innocently pulled over. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. And he, you know, I guess he saw me. And as I was reading something, and then I look up and I noticed he's directly in front of my car. And apparently I pulled over near his home and he accused me of stalking him. And then things kind of got heated from there. And he even threatened me. He even said, you know, eventually he's going to get to, you know, me and you are going to have our, you know, our day or whatever. I'm like, okay. And so, you know, he's just been accusing me of a lot of stuff. You know, these media guys are, you know, just, you know, listen, I don't know. I don't want to give too much about it. But here, obviously, the media guys pissed off Mueller and Olson because they ended up filing a lawsuit against Hezi in the Yonkers Tribune. So we'll get into that. And again, as you know, I mentioned before in the previous podcast, you know, you're getting a lot of support. You're getting a lot of support. And you recently told me that you got some support from some, you know, people recently that you haven't mentioned before. Tell me about that, because I have the a message you received from someone. And so I wanted you to tell me about that, and I'll put the put it up here.
Yeah, you know, after the last podcast, I opened up a new Facebook page. A lot of people I don't know, by the way, have sent me friend requests on that Facebook page.
Really?
Yeah, under my name. And so if you're one of these people out there who have sent me a friend request and I haven't accepted it, don't take offense, please. It's just because I don't know you. And,
right,
you know, it's not uncommon for people who might not like me or certain people who are adversary to me in my own situation with the city of Yonkers. It's not uncommon for them to make a fake profile and put up somebody else's pic and try to get it on my page, you know. So that's why I haven't, you know, I haven't friended some people who have sent me friend requests, but you can still follow my page, Anthony DiMaggio.
Yeah, I got a lot of these weird, you know, friend requests also a lot lately. I've always checked them out, you know, to see. And also, I do basement politics, so I try to accept people so they can, you know, come to follow the page. But I've also gotten a lot of now, like these women that I know are fake, and then they're trying to, like, then they message me and they say, "Hey, how you doing, babe?" and stuff, and I just, like, I delete it right away. I'm just assuming someone here, yeah, because it's trying to set me up, you know. So I'm like, this, I'm not with that. But yes, you gotta watch out for that. But this person that messaged you isn't fake, right? And I'm gonna put this up here.
No, not at all, not fake. That is the former police commissioner, former Yonkers police commissioner, Charles Cola. When I set up this new Facebook page, I sent him a friend request because I know him a long time. And within a matter of minutes, he sent me this message. "Hey, Anthony, I just watched your podcast. Good job. You were right on the money."
You're right on the money. Now, what does he mean by that exactly? You're right on the money. What does he mean? Go ahead.
Well, I didn't say what do you mean by that, but I just, he was a member of the Yonkers Police Department for a long time. He was the PPA president before he was the commissioner. He was the commissioner during 9/11, actually, and he knows as well as anybody how things work in the city of Yonkers. Think about everything that we spoke about during those first
Right.
2 episodes. And he actually told me that he had not watched the third one yet at the time that he sent that message, but he had watched the first 2, where I'm talking about the crooked shrinks, talking about the pay-to-play politics, talking about a lot of dirty stuff. And he and I didn't discuss any of it specifically. We kept the conversation very brief. Actually, after that, he and I just talked a little bit about a mutual friend. I'll tell him I said hello and haven't talked to him in a while and things like that. And that was it. So we didn't really need to get into details because we both know what it is. Now, let me just say to Charles, if you're out there, and I'm sure you're going to watch this podcast at some point, I didn't ask Charles' permission before I sent that to you and said, let's put it up on the screen. I asked Charles to understand. I don't know if you would be upset about it or not, but I ask you to understand I'm in the fight of my life here, man. I'm up against a lot. I'm up against the mayor's office. I'm up against the commissioner's office. I'm up against the crooked shrinks, the crooked attorneys, all the taxpayer money they have to spend on these idiots. I'm up against the family court. I'm up against a lot. So an endorsement like that coming from the former police commissioner really means a lot to me in my fight right now. So I didn't have any choice but to show.
I'm sorry. I want to ask you, and tell me why is it, what prompted you? Why are you doing the podcast and coming on? And I love having, get me wrong, it's great. And, I enjoy the podcast. People, a lot of people have said great things about you and great things about the podcast and they love it. So, you're welcome here. But I'm just asking just to get an idea, what is it that, what made you come out and start to talk about it? And what do you, hope to get out of it? What do you like to see, Because I'm sure people are asking, why is he doing this? Because you're going to get haters. You get people that, just got a comment. I just want to read. Do you guys ever hang offline? I feel like you have a great connection. You could do karate together in the garage together. I don't know, Malik fam, So you're going to have people that are going to have, these negative comments and stuff. And it comes with the territory, it is what it is. But so tell me, people who wonder, what is, what's his, reason? Why is he coming on, and to talk about this?
Well, at the end of the day, I always feel like in any situation where people are succeeding at setting you up and rigging things against you, at the end of the day, reality is the final arbiter, which is why I actually have a Churchill poster on order. Winston Churchill is my political and historical idol. And I have a poster of him in the mail on the way. It's going to be on that wall behind me next time we do a podcast, and it has a quote on it about never ever submitting to tyrants, no matter how strong they are, no matter how hard they're coming at you.
Right.
Just don't give in to them. Keep fighting because I have all the facts on my side. And at the end of the day, reality is the final arbiter. And as I said to some of these idiots in a department email that I had sent out when I knew I was going down, I said, you idiots get away with everything that you get away with by operating in the shadows where nobody can see what you're doing. But I told them, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And the shadows are shrinking beneath you. I'm telling you right now, you really picked a fight with the wrong guy this time. So, this is what they call sunlight, what we're doing here.
So, you feel like you've been, obviously wrongfully terminated. You were, this was tyranny. You were, retaliated against because you had an issue with a certain other officer, and you feel like you were wrong. Then you have to, I guess, clear your name, show that this shit is going on in the parts of my language. This is what's going on. It's happened to me and it happened to other people. It's going to probably happen to other possibly. And I want to expose it. But, on the flip side to that, I've gotten, people commenting and also, people have reached out and they said, well, this guy, Anthony is a bit nuts. He's a little crazy, be careful with him, watch what his intentions are. And so, and I got to put that out there. But, you're not schizophrenic. You're not paranoid, right? You were told that they were coming after you, right? You were told by someone in the department, correct?
I was told. And by the way, I mentioned on the last podcast that I would speak to the person who sat me down and gave me the heads up that I was being plotted against. I did get word back from that individual, and he gave me the green light to go ahead and say his name. So for those of you who don't already know, it was now retired first deputy chief of the department, Tim Hodges.
So Tim Hodges, who's a very good guy, and I've always said great things about him. I like him a lot. I'm gonna take his word for it. Whenever he says something to me, that's the type of guy he is, and and the confidence I have in his honesty. And he sat you down and said that they were plotting against you.
In no uncertain terms. Right.
Wow. And that's big coming from Tim Hodges. I mean, in my opinion, that's big. Coming from Tim Hodges, and that definitely for me says they were plotting against you.
Yeah, and he was. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, lots of respect for Tim. Exactly. A lot of people have a lot of respect for Tim. They like Tim Hodges a lot. Support him a lot. I've never heard anything bad about Tim Hodges. That's probably the only person that I've never heard anything bad about. So coming from him, that's a big, kind of a big endorsement, a big, supporting.
Yeah, well, like I said, he was the chief that I was speaking about that was actively thwarting a lot of the Olsenettes' revenge missions, doing what he could to thwart them. He was only so powerful. He was only in a position to help out whoever the target was at a given time.
Right. I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah. I mean, I could tell some of those stories. Tonight I want to, it was Timmy. And I want to get into some of the stuff in the depth. Timmy is not really mentioned too much in this deposition.
Yeah.
I can't comment.
Let's talk about that really quick. I just want to just give a little back. This is the deposition from the lawsuit, Mueller and Olson lawsuit against Hezi Aris of the Yonkers Tribune. And so they had to, Hezi Aris was represented by Michael Sussman. And Michael Sussman is a very well-known attorney. He was involved with the whole desegregation stuff back in the 80s as well, civil rights attorney and stuff like that. And a lot of people go to Michael Sussman whenever they have some issue, it seems like, with the city, especially when it comes to their civil rights or some kind of rights. But so he represented Hezi. So tell me, talk about this deposition. What's important in there that we need to know?
Okay, so when Mueller and Olson filed this lawsuit against Hezi, it was basically about a whole series of articles that Hezi had written over a span of, 10 or 12 years or so. Most of them classified under a subgroup of articles within his website called The Blue Truth. Most of them were about John Mueller and Keith Olson. And, Mueller's fraudulent ascent through the ranks. Keith Olson's very cozy and possibly even financially corrupt relationship with the Spanos, things that they had done to other cops, the Ray Montero situation. So a whole bunch of things that Mueller was basically saying were untrue, that Hezi didn't do his research before he printed any of this stuff. Another big thing he was saying that I read several times throughout the deposition was that Hezi stated these things as if they were fact. He never put in there that he was just citing from sources, but actually it seems like he did. He never put in there that this is opinion and he's just stating these things as facts. And now I'm reading some stuff where Sussman is questioning Mueller about job applications that he had filled out. Most of them were online. Things like he applied for some high-level security position within the NFL, another one within the United Nations. And these were applications that he was basically just filling out some information online and sending them in. But there were also a couple jobs that he applied for where he had actually gotten interviews. Two that I can tell as far as what's said in this deposition. One was for the commissioner of the Westchester County Department of Public Safety, which is, the Westchester County cops, the Westchester County Police Department falls under that branch. And the other one was for, I believe, I have some notes here, the New York State Attorney General's office, chief investigator at the New York State Attorney General's office. So he actually got interviews for those jobs. According to the deposition, each of those interviews was only a half hour long, which means, if you ask me, those are important positions. So if your interview was only a half hour long, that means they probably decided within a minute of talking to you. But
Right.
no, according to him, it was all Hezi, and everything Hezi's writing about me is
So he was
causing me to
blaming
turn down
Hezi for
jobs.
not being able to get these positions that he applied for. He went into an interview. They were about a half hour long. You're saying that these positions, if you're going for an interview, they should be a lot longer. There's probably multiple interviews, with various people. And so if it was that short, then they probably saw something there that really just said, this guy is not the guy. And so, but he blamed it on Hezi.
He's blaming it on Hezi. You see, the problem with Mueller is that he seems to be the only one who doesn't understand why he even made deputy chief in Yonkers. And it's because of his good friend Keith Olson's business and financial relationship with the Spanos. It's that it's that simple.
So that's the only reason you're saying that John Mueller got any of the the positions that he got, especially the commissioner.
To get to the rank of captain, you have to go through sergeant, lieutenant, and then you get to captain. Now, those are just multiple choice tests that you take. You study. There's actually an organization in Westchester that will guide you through the studying process. They're very familiar with the types of questions that the state examiners ask on the promotion tests. So that's how I got 100. I studied hard. I got 100 on the lieutenant's test. I studied very hard with this group, as did a lot of other guys around my age group. And they all wrote 98s, 96s. So if you put the time in for those tests, you'll get to captain eventually.
Right. But so taking the test is, you're saying it's simple, just a matter of studying.
Yeah, it's just a matter of studying. I mean, it's I make a joke with myself. I actually say I studied myself into termination, because if I hadn't studied so hard, I wouldn't have made lieutenant as soon as I did, and I would have never been in the position that I was in that day. So now I can't get back those 9 months that I spent studying so hard for lieutenant.
Someone says that Hezi has real sources and they are true. And one of the things that they wanted Hezi to do was to identify his sources. Yes, right.
He named 2 sources.
And who were they?
He named Ray Montero, which was no surprise.
Right.
And he named Charles Gardner, which was a bit of a surprise.
Right.
It's not surprising that the police commissioner talks to the press, but yeah. Well,
Charles Gardner left because he couldn't deal with the corruption.
Right. In a nutshell. But from what I was told, the judge ultimately dismissed Mueller's and Olson's motion for a summary judgment. Basically saying, look at the facts here and just tell us that we're right and that we win the lawsuit. And the judge, took note of these depositions that were taken and looked at the facts and denied them that motion. And they said, all right, it's time. You can either go to trial, which I don't advise you do, because anybody who reads the Yonkers Tribune, any reasonable person who reads the Yonkers Tribune is likely to be aware that they're reading opinion, not fact. So that's the way it was explained to me. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know if it happened that way.
Right. Because and I've spoken with my attorney about this, because people have said I'm going to get sued, and I've been threatened by 3 people, 3 different people now with lawsuits. It's been a while since I've received a lawsuit threat, but I have sat with my attorney. I've spoken about it, and to a certain extent, you can say certain things. And, these defamation lawsuits they're not that easy to win. Also, you have to prove that there was some real tangible, loss or whatever it did impact it in some way. And, if, it is an opinion, you're entitled to state your opinion, right? And if you're saying, I know this for a fact, this is actually what's happening. And when I talk about it, give out some information, I say, this is what sources are saying, or this is what being said. I'm just amplifying what's being said. I'm not making it up. And and sometimes, and I've read the Yonkers Tribune. I think sometimes he's saying it like it is fact, though. And I've had, I don't really always agree with the way he does things, but he has spoken about things like they are fact. And but now he's not saying so much about these guys anymore, right? And so why is that? What do you think that is? He's laid off a lot.
I think, obviously, if a case like this is still ongoing, and as far as I know, it may be, I don't know for a fact that it's over with. So obviously, a good attorney like Michael Sussman is going to tell Hezi, just hold off for a while until this is over with, which I think is the obvious thing to do.
Well, maybe it's over with actually, because it's been brought to my attention that he's actually now been putting articles that actually not are negative towards the administration. That article where he talked about the politics on the Hudson, right? He compared the administration to a crime family, and then he did another article also. I forgot what it was, but it wasn't flattering, and it wasn't good towards the administration. And someone say, oh, look, Hezzy's now speaking about the administration negatively. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe that case is over. Is there anything in the deposition, man, that you think that is interesting or that we should know? Or
what I did was essentially I went through and I had heard about a lot of the things that are being discussed in it, maybe even most of them, but there are only a few that I have direct knowledge about from having been a member of the 4th Precinct under John Muller's command in 2012.
And what are some of those things? I think I know you wanted to also discuss a little bit about the environment there in the 4th Precinct at the time with Mueller.
So let me I have these things, the printout of the deposition was 40 or so. Yeah.
So the Hezzy lawsuits on appeal in the 2nd Circuit still ongoing.
So
apple juice, by the way. I don't want to get accused of, I don't know, what could they accuse me of drinking?
Hey, it's Friday night, man. You're an adult. You do.
I love it. I'm an apple juice guy. I think anyone that knows where different business owners where I go to all the time, that's what I buy.
So when I printed out the deposition, it printed out to 40 or 50 something pages, and I have probably about 12, 15 in front of me where I have some things highlighted, things that I know a little bit about, either directly because I was there or from a very good source, So the first thing we'll start out with is that Sussman is asking Mueller if he had ever sought the position of police commissioner previous to his appointment in 2019. The answer, as everyone knows, is yes. He was the guy that Keith Olsen obviously was pushing for when he was throwing the PBA endorsement to Mike Spano, when Mike Spano was first running to become the mayor of Yonkers. And, Spano not
that was before Gardner. You're talking about before Gardner.
Right. Well, this is when they appointed Gardner instead of Mueller.
Right.
So the story as it goes, and I have this from pretty good sources, this story is all over the police department, is that, Keith Olsen is pretty bullheaded, and he wanted his guy in. But Spano, not wanting to look like he's beholden to a PBA president, tried to obfuscate the situation a little bit by saying, okay, well, we know you want Mueller, but give me 5 other names as well. Give me a list with 5 names on it, people that you think would make a good police commissioner from within this department. Because the promise that was made, the only promise that was made was that Edmund Hartnett, who was a New York City guy that Phil Emacone had brought in, he's gone. If you throw the PBA endorsement my way and I win, he's gone. I'll give you a Yonkers guy. We all know you want Mueller, but give me 5 other names. So I think he's thinking of maybe I could at least make it look like I at least look at some other candidates before I put Mueller in. So Keith Olsen, being the guy that he is, says, okay, he writes out a list with 5 names on it. Name number 1, John Mueller. Name number 2, John Mueller. Name number 3, John Mueller. Names 4 and 5, John Mueller, and gives it to Mike Spano.
Really?
Yeah. Mike Spano says, what's wrong with this guy? Like, he thinks like I'm just going to take orders from him on who to pick as police commissioner. You know what? I'm going to pick Chucky Gardner.
Yeah.
Now, that was the fortitudinal thing to do. I mean, you don't want to. You can't take orders from the PBA president.
Right. Yeah, he had to do that. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why he would make that move. He should have at least played ball with him a little bit, right?
Well, I'm glad he did. Okay, because if he had been a little smarter and put 5 other names, Spano probably would have picked Mueller. And all the progress that got made over the 8 years of Chucky Gardner's tenure.
That's a good point.
Made,
That's a good point.
So I'm glad that he did. But that's the story behind that. Thanks, Catherine.
They think Catherine is a fake page, actually, but it's not. It's a real person. She's a real person. It's been verified without the blue check.
Right. Then he starts getting into the interviews for these other positions, and in particular, Mueller talks about, or Sussman asks him questions about his interviews for the Westchester County position, for which he did have actually 2 interviews. He went once for a half hour, an interview with Ken Jenkins and another fellow. I can't find the name. There was another guy there with Mr. Jenkins. Ken Jenkins is a real nice guy. He probably wouldn't remember, but I actually met him once through a mutual friend. Him and his wife, I think. I met both of them, and they're really, really nice people. I don't know why on earth they would ever be friends with a guy like Mueller. But apparently, Mueller says that they're good friends. So he had an interview with Ken Jenkins and somebody else from what then county executive elect, because this was right after Latimer was elected. And he had put together a search team to look for a new police commissioner.
Right.
So these two fellas, Jenkins and this other guy, sat down with Mueller and gave him a half-hour interview. Then I guess Latimer wanted to have an interview with him himself. So they brought him back for a second interview, which, again, according to Mueller, was only a half-hour long.
Right.
And at some point after that, Ken Jenkins called him and told him that they were going with a fellow named Tom Gleason. I don't know anything about the Westchester County PD. I don't even know if that's the guy that's still there.
I guess they weren't good friends, huh?
Well, I mean, it was Latimer's choice. And, Mueller, having bought into his own legend of this evil genius badass, can't imagine why he was turned down, except for must have been what he's writing about me, right?
Right.
Well, I'm going to tell John why they turned him down, because everybody who looks at John or is meeting him for the first time can tell within 30 seconds of talking to him that he's a squirrel-headed charlatan. Okay, he's a dope of the highest order. And the only reason he made chief in Yonkers is because his path to chief was greased with union cash going into Nick Spano's pocket. It's that simple. He never gets past captain if he didn't have the connections that he had. He's not a guy that anybody takes seriously. They take him seriously a little bit because they're afraid of him, because he's so nuts, and he sets people up with mayoral impunity. Every time he starts a fire, well, the mayor knows all about John Mueller. He knows everything that he does.
Like what? Give me some examples. Like
okay,
what?
Well, I mean, obviously, what happened with Ray Montero was public information.
Right.
There have been other people. A guy now retired, Matt Russo, was a captain, sent countless emails to Human Resources complaining about Mueller cutting him off from overtime, targeting him in this way, targeting him in that way. Some of that is in here a little bit, but I spoke to Russo a couple of times since he retired, and he told me all about this. There were others. There are some people who are still on the job whose name I won't mention because they are still on the job.
Right.
That he went after in similar ways, cutting them off from overtime, something that he denies in this deposition. He denies that he ever cut anybody off from overtime for retaliatory reasons. Everybody knows that that's not true. They know what he did with me. I mean, they know what he did with me. I know for a fact that they know what he did with me because my father called Mike Spano and told him. Okay, you know what Mike Spano did in response? Told the lawyers to get involved and to put out the fire. And actually, I told my father that that's what was going to happen. He said, now, remember in the second podcast, I mentioned this story where he had ordered a piece of evidence that made up lies about my relationship with my daughter.
Right, to be fabricated.
When we figured out what he did, my father.
And you're talking about Mueller,
yes.
not Mike Spano. I just want to be clear.
No. Mueller did it. Okay.
Right.
When we found out what he did, when we put it together, and it didn't take long, my father said to me, "You have to let me call Mike."
Because your families go back, for a long time. They know each other somewhat well.
Yeah, my parents, my father, worked on Mike Spano's campaign when he was running for assemblyman way back in the day. Used to answer phones for his campaign and things like that. I mean, they definitely have a good relationship, or had one, I should say. I don't know if they ever will again.
Right.
My father is heartbroken over this. I'm not. I'm ready to fight. You know what I mean? But my father is really sad about this, and
I'm sure. I mean,
trying to cheer him up all the time.
Your dad was, also a police officer, captain, right? Yeah. Correct, in the Yonkers Police Department, and he, it would make him sad that this would happen to his son, especially after he followed in his footsteps, becoming lieutenant, and then the people, I guess you have some kind of relationship, and so
Mueller worked under my father at one point.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So my
how was that?
Well.
How was that? How did your dad have any issues ever with Mueller?
No, they all worked under him. My father was he was the commanding officer of the housing unit back when they worked in the housing unit. Remember, I had alluded to this one point. I wasn't sure if I wanted to say exactly who it was, but I said I'm very, very close to the person who was their commanding officer. We were talking about the Olsenettes.
Right.
My father, they worked for him.
Right. Now, and there was nothing that, I mean, how did that, I mean, nothing, that relationship, your dad's phone call. I mean, I know he said to get the attorneys involved, but, that was pretty much it. There was nothing that relationship could help with your
No, and
situation.
the reason was at that point they already knew how much I had on them. Like I said, I had sent that voicemail down to Internal Affairs. I'm like, listen, you idiots. I know you didn't hear the voicemail. Listen to what he's saying to me. I reported that the guy left me a voicemail of a threatening and confrontational nature, but I didn't tell him exactly what he said. They probably thought I was talking about he threatened to beat me up or something, which he has no shot of doing anyway. But they probably thought I meant that he was threatening me with violence.
Right.
So they didn't take it seriously. But then when they listened to the voicemail, they said, "Oh, he threatened him with retaliation, which we're now doing to him." So now, I also have a chain of emails showing how they took my complaint, where I didn't make a formal complaint. I didn't write anybody up disciplinary wise. But I had sent an email to a couple of the chiefs saying, look, things are a little out of control. This guy is a little out of control. He left me this wild voicemail. And Joe Monaco, deputy chief, was one of the recipients of this email. Apparently, he meant to send an email to Tim Hodges basically saying that he spoke to Dan Campanini, who was Goomba's commanding officer, and he spoke to Internal Affairs. Okay, Justin Barbado, Internal Affairs.
I love how you say that Goomba. Even when you type in, you're writing me to prepare before the show. You even write Goomba, and when you're typing, I thought it was funny. I just wanted to mention that. I said even when he writes the email, it's Goomba.
Yeah, well, I want to keep myself in the habit of saying it so I don't slip up and actually give him some attention by accident
right.
During the show. But so I had this email chain where Joe Monaco, who was the chief of the investigations bureau,
right,
is telling Timmy Hodges, "Oh, I spoke to Internal Affairs and I spoke to Goomba's boss, the detective captain, and none of us want anything to do with what Anthony DiMaggio is talking about. So we think you should handle it, Timmy. Take a look into it and come up with something, okay?" 3 weeks later, I'm getting called down to Internal Affairs in a different set of emails. So I basically showed them all of this in hopes that they would just pump the brakes and stop and make this all go away. But that was stupid because Mueller doesn't know how to do that. Okay, that would be a loss in his column, and he's so insecure and thin-skinned that he can't accept that maybe someone might have got the better of him and his boys in this situation.
Some people are just like that. Yeah, some people are just like that. They're not strategic that way. They're not. They don't think, and they're more emotional. Emotionally driven, and so it's like, oh, I'm going to show you, right? Rather than say, hold up, maybe this is getting out of hand. Let's maybe just kind of die this down. Smooth it out, and before it goes left. But that's not what happened.
Right, but we had on the job. A lot of us had a joke that there's a mad squirrel living between Mueller's ears. And that's where he gets his orders from, because he's so batshit. He's so.
Is that nuts. Like a joke? A lot of people in the department would say
only the people who know him well.
Right.
Right.
And so what happened with Tim Hodges? So what did he said he asked Tim Hodges to deal with it. What did Tim do? Is that when he sat you down and told you that?
Tim sent an order down through my captain, Frank Cariello, telling me to write up an official supervisor's report about the voicemail and everything. And I said, no, I'm not doing that, for two reasons. First of all, if I had wanted to do that, I would have just done it from the beginning. I wasn't looking to get anybody in trouble.
Right.
Second of all, I've been a part of the department long enough to know that anything that I write up about Goomba is going right through the shredder the second it's out of my sight. You know what I mean? It's not. Right. That's what's going to happen. Literally, I'm not speaking figuratively. Someone is going to send it through the shredder and forget all about it because he's a made guy.
Right.
Right. And
and right. That's what. And I just want to say, stop real there. And you said made guy, right? And that's something that you mentioned before in previous podcasts. That there was a different ranking system, right? Even though you outranked him, you were a lieutenant. He was a sergeant, detective sergeant. You still outranked him, but there's this hidden ranking system, right? Where technically, in that system, he outranked you, and he was out to show you that was the case, and that's why you said he's a made guy, right? You don't mess with a made guy, and that's a reference to the mafia. When a guy is made, he's brought into the family, and you can't touch that guy unless you get permission from the top guys, and
right.
and you kind of touched a guy that was made. And so, and they have to, even the top guys, right? Even though they like you, right? It's like, this is the rules, right? This is our thing, or Marta, right? Like you said.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, on that email where Monaco was telling Hodges, but the problem is he hit the reply to all button, and I'm in on the email chain. I'm sure he didn't mean to send that to me, but for some reason he felt the need to hit the reply to all button because he wanted everyone else in the email chain to have it, but he didn't realize that I was on the email chain too. So he hits the reply to all button, and now I have that email showing them basically sweeping Goomba's nonsense under the rug. But then, 3 weeks later, I'm getting called down to internal affairs about the incident. I said, these guys, they think they're evil genius badasses. They really do. But they're not. They're morons. Right. And Mueller in particular, he's gotten away with so much over the years that he thinks he could just do whatever he wants, and everyone's going to lay down to him and let him get away with it. The mayor's going to cover for him, So he lost his qualified immunity in the Ray Montero case. We could talk for hours about qualified immunity and what it is. It was a hot button issue in the press a couple of years ago. Qualified immunity, basically, what it boils down to is it's a mulligan, if you want to use golf terms. You get a do-over, If you had gotten caught doing this to a civilian, you would have lost your job immediately and probably went to jail, and rightfully so. But subordinates aren't really people. They're not humans, so you get to try this again. Go back to work. Don't worry about it. But don't get caught doing it again, because next time it will be serious. Okay? He lost that. He lost his mulligan in the Ray Montero case. Now, Mike Spano, knowing the piece of garbage that he is, stone cold evidence fabricator, makes him the police commissioner anyway. So when he does this to me again, when he does this 3 months into his tenure, and I go to them and I show them all the evidence I have, they are now in a full-blown political emergency. Okay?
Right.
This guy, if he can't get me off the payroll and scare away my attorney, he's going to get sued. He's going to lose. His police career is going to be over with. Mike Spano is going to look like a complete boob for having appointed him, knowing his history. It is so A1 critical. Let me just say this real quick. It is so A1 critical to their political self-preservation that they find themselves a licensed psychologist who will hand them a report saying that I cannot go back to duty in any capacity so that they can get me off the payroll. It's so A1 critical that they find such a guy that they would have to be completely out of their mind to not go out and find such a guy who's going to guarantee them that long before I ever walk into his office. It's that important, because if this guy lets me go back to a desk, which, by the way, is what happens in 99% of cases where there is actual domestic violence with a cop puts his hands on his wife or his kid or something and has real problems, you know what they do? The department calls the doctor, says, we want to put him on a desk. Send him back to us on a desk, modified duty. And the doctor says, sure, no problem. He goes back to a desk. They take his guns. They keep him on close supervision. He's a danger to absolutely nobody. And the department doesn't have to pay overtime to fill his spot in his absence. They always want you to stay at least on the desk with no guns under close supervision. Because if they put you out entirely, they have to pay somebody on overtime every night to fill your spot. So, once you understand how absolutely off your rocker you have to be for a doctor to put you out completely, you understand that the fix is in. That's them telling their doctor, we need into Article 72.
Right.
So this is what you have to do for us. And I think that's what Charlie Kohler was saying when he said you were right on the money. Because we talked a lot about that over the first 2 episodes. The doctors, how they use them.
So and really quick, I want to say, why do you think that Mike Spano, knowing this, still appointed him commissioner? And I think we might have talked a little bit about that, but I know he may have been owing, I guess, Keith Olsen a favor, from prior, but he didn't. He appointed Charles Gardner. Why do it now? Why,
Well, there's a real easy answer to that question. It's because Boss Tweed told him to. Nicky Boy Spano. I call him Boss Tweed. Okay, Mike Spano doesn't run this city. Mike Spano doesn't wipe his ass unless Nick tells him to.
So, but why would even Nick Spano then, have him be named when it could cause problems for them?
Because Keith has been paying Empire Strategic a ton of money annually. It's to the tune of $30,000 or something in that area. Under the guise of he's going to do all this lobbying for us, but all he's doing is pocketing the cash and letting Keith run the police department. It's that simple.
And you're talking about the the union dues, right? Or they're paying out of the union dues. They're paying.
Right.
You're saying Nick Spano to consult for the PBA
It's a lobby on behalf of the
to
PBA.
lobby,
That's what it's supposed to be.
right?
Right. Right. But
And what would
really,
they be lobbying for?
right. Well, as we said on the first podcast, there's always some legislation before the floor in Albany that cops feel they have a
Right.
stake in.
Right.
And
Well, has there been
but
anything recently or anything considerable recently or something that they've done that justifies, that amount of money that they're receiving?
no, not that I know of. That's why it's kind of a blatant scam. And the CLS too, by the way. The CLS, it's not just the PBA. All of the CLS puppet presidents, all appointed by Mike Spano, they're signing checks up to Empire Strategic. That's why Mike Hanley issued a stand-down order. A stand-down order, meaning don't do anything, don't do your job, for Anthony DiMaggio. Because if Mike Hanley allows union counsel, who's Chris Harold up in White Plains, to do his job on behalf of me and gets me back to work without me first signing a waiver of my rights to sue the city, the first thing I'm going to do when I get back to work, after Chris Harold gets me back to work, is I'm going to sue the city.
Yes, the city,
I'm going to embarrass the mayor, and I'm going to embarrass John Mueller. And Mike Hanley is not going to get the prize, whatever it may be, that Mike Spano has promised him at the end of his tenure. That's the way it works. Mike Hanley is selling me out to get himself a prize.
Right, because that's their job, right? As the union,
Yes.
and you pay your dues, that is their job. They're supposed to file a grievance on your behalf,
1,000%.
and nothing was done.
Nothing. Zero.
The union just, what did they tell you? Just sign this paper so you can get your job back, right? Basically, they were trying to encourage you to sign.
Mike Hanley called me one day, and he's giving me all these ideas about how we're going to get you back. We're going to make an appointment for you to go see this doctor, and he'll give you a better opinion. I said, Mike, I'm not going to any doctors, bro. There isn't a damn thing wrong with me. And, it's a failing play. It's a losing play, because the doctors, even the ones that aren't directly in the city's pocket, even the ones who don't have a contract with the city, they're all still managerial allies. They could very easily find themselves blacklisted if they return to work someone that management doesn't want back to work, because police administrators, chiefs, commissioners, they all have professional associations too. So if I go to some doctor 6 counties away and he gives me a great opinion and I go back to work, well, guess what? Phone calls are going to be made.
Yeah, they know each other.
The police administrators up around where that doctor works. This is what he did to us. Don't give him any more business. So you can't, once your police commissioner starts playing games with your psychological stability to do your job, you have problems you can't even begin to imagine. Because Lenny Spano, the mayor's brother, told me on the phone, Anthony, this is a rigged game. Don't fight this with your own attorney. Do things through us. We will make it okay. Sign the agreement. Go for the counseling. I said, not a chance, Len. Not a chance.
You're saying Lenny Spano told you that?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
That conversation I wish I had recorded, because this would have been slam dunk game over a long time ago.
Right. Yeah. And you've said a lot of stuff on these podcasts. This is the 4th interview now. You've said a lot of stuff about the Spano specifically. Have you had any problems or any issues, or anyone's called you, reached out to you, to anyone? Anything?
No, but some of my friends make jokes. It was a week and a half or so ago. I had an appointment to meet up with some of my friends, and I'm always on time for everything, if not early. I was actually a little late, like 5 minutes or so, because of traffic. And when I showed up, they were laughing. They were laughing like hysterically. I said, "What are you laughing at?" He said, "Bro, we thought Nick had you taken out."
Yeah.
And they said, "By the way, we're only half kidding." I said, "Listen, it is what it is. I'm ready for whatever comes. I can't not fight this. I can't. What kind of a cop would I be?"
I've gotten those phone calls also. People are like, "I've got a call. You all right? Are you good? You okay?" I'm like, "What do you mean? Oh, I've heard that you got roughed up or something like that." It's crazy that that people believe that, because it's a possibility, or that they believe that that's real. Maybe it is real. I don't know, but that's just
I don't know.
Unbelievable.
No.
Yeah. And listen, it is what it is, right? Like with Rue Rose today, he threatened me. I said, well, do what you got to do. He approached me, accusing me of all kinds of stuff. But, we got to tell the truth, right? We have to speak the truth, speak our truth and stuff.
That's
Now,
right.
would you take your job back if they offered it to you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was 2 years and 4 months shy of a pension. Who wants to give up a 6-figure pension?
Or maybe if they work out some kind of like retirement package, say, okay, listen, you're not coming back to join, but we'll give you a retirement, your pension back, and let you retire, whatever. Would you, like to work something like that out, right?
Well, I mean, I'd have to speak to counsel before considering any offer that would
Right.
be made. But at this point, again, they don't like to eat crow. And making an offer to me, making some sort of a settlement, they would consider that eating crow, and they don't like to do that. So.
Yeah, I know some people are like that, and I've never, thought that was always the best way to be, at the end of the day, they're still winning. You would be winning, I don't see why that would be a bad thing for be a great thing for you. I don't see how it would be bad for them, especially if they're wrong and they just, maybe don't want this to, because I've gotten an email, right? And I'm sure they would want you to go away. I'm sure they don't want you talking about the podcast. I'm sure there's certain other people, and I think that we might get into at another podcast, at another time, that would not want you speaking and stuff like that. But I did get an email, and I think I spoke about this last week with you, and they were in the email. I'm sure it was a fake name. Were asking me to ask you, or were telling me to ask you. If it was okay to foil some documents and stuff, right? And I told you about this, and you said, "Well, I already have the documents right here," and so you send me some. So there's definitely people watching, and they're whoever it is, and they're definitely upset with what you're doing, and they've reached out to me anyway, right? This email,
and I'll tell you exactly who that is. I'll tell you exactly who that is. Can't prove it, but that is the Squirrely Prince, Knucklehead Smith himself. That is John Mueller. And I know, based on things that he's done, guarantee you, this guy either created a fake profile himself or had someone else do it. And, he's leaving things out. He's leaving out things that would make him look bad. I want Freddie to have those internal affairs documents that I had my black shirts cook up down on Radford Street.
Right.
So if it was you and y'all are watching, we're going to get to that, pal. Calm down. You got no shot of selling these tickets. This is going to play out the way it's supposed to. And I am going to, Freddie, we are going to get into that stuff.
And what was you hope? What was he hoping I'd find? What in these documents, or what was
right,
the point of the purpose?
They on the night of the incident, Goomba. See, I wasn't ready to talk about some of this stuff yet because there are people involved that I wasn't ready really yet to reveal that they were involved. So I got to try to find a way to give a little bit of an idea without really mentioning certain names. But so they got their hands on certain text messages that I had sent to my daughter's mother of a fiery nature, argumentative, highly argumentative. Okay. What they ignored was the ones that she's sending back to me. Right. As I told you on the last podcast, you said that I have domestic violence issues,
right? Because that's somebody had reached somebody. Right. Again, these emails, this fake person or whatever, fake account or whatever. And I got to bring it up, right? Because that's just me being fair, and I'm going to mention it. Because also I have to look out, make sure I'm doing my due diligence, so I don't look like I'm being one-sided. So I had to bring that on, and I guess that you're saying that some of the information in those documents would show some of this stuff, and that's what they were hoping that I'd see, and so I can bring it up. But you're going to bring it up anyway, right? You're going to mention it at some point also.
There's nothing wild. There's nothing, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to cut your head off. No, there's nothing crazy like that. It's a lot of petulant, childish fighting, a lot of cursing, a lot of you F and B, things like that. And, we fight like children on a daily basis. We were doing it the other night. I think I showed you some of that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So this is daily.
Yeah, I mean, it's stuff that I've seen this before with with people who separate. They have a child, or maybe they have children involved, and it gets really people get really nasty with each other. That's a thin line between love and hate, they say, right?
Yeah. Well,
and so you have to take that with a grain of salt. So that's something that people on the outside looking at will have to say, okay, that's there, because again, I didn't see anything. I'm like, oh man, it's just stuff that we just say, that's their personal
Exactly,
business.
exactly.
You know, that's their relationship. You know,
Right.
nothing that hey, you got to call the cops. Hey, something's gonna happen. You know, like I was watching something on Netflix. The Sins of My Mother. It's on Netflix now. This woman just killed her own kids. Man, she met this guy, and it was just crazy and stuff. And so the things that she was saying, that the husband was, trying to get the cops to believe him, but they wouldn't until it was too late. But anyway, it's nothing like that is my point. Nothing, it's just, again, stuff between,
Right.
you and people
Now,
just.
she would have to call the police. It's not they would have to call the police. If she had an issue with anything that was going
Right.
on, she would have to call the police. But that's not her style. Her style is, she's going to give it right back to me. And we're just going to go at it. Maybe for hours. But at the end of the night, I'm going to call my daughter and I'm going to speak to her. And sometimes I speak to her mother on the phone. At the end of the night, we talk about things that are going on with our daughter and everything. Everything goes back to normal. So it's just, she's a very fiery personality. I love my daughter's mother. I really do. And I told this to my daughter. I said, I love your mom. She's a special person to me. We were together for almost 8 years. We had a lot of good times together, and she gave me you. So how could I not love her?
Right.
But we're not good together. We fight. We're very similar types of personalities. I don't like to back down. She don't like to back down. This is a tough chick, man.
You've never had like police come to your house or cops called and on some domestic or anything like that,
One time in 2014 or 2015, we were arguing, and she was holding our daughter that was an infant, and she was screaming her head off at me, and our daughter was crying, visibly just scared.
Right.
So I was looking at her. I said, "Just stop." Okay. I was yelling too, but when I saw my daughter, I said, "Just stop. Look at the baby. She's terrified. All right, I'm done." Not good enough for her. Screaming at me. And our daughter's hysterical. I walk over to her. I take the baby. I go into the bathroom and I lock the door. I said, "Go calm down. I will give you your daughter back when you calm down. She is terrified. Okay. Give us the baby. Give me the baby back or I'm calling the police." I said, "You do what you got to do, but I'm not giving you the baby back until you calm down."
Right.
She dials 911. Right now, she's doing it not because she's afraid of anything. She's doing it to give me the business because she doesn't like that I took the baby from her, Right. So she calls, and as she's dialing, she realizes the consequences of the game she's about to play.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
And she hangs up. But standard operating procedure when the emergency dispatchers get a 911 hang up, they call it. They call right back.
Right.
So she gets the call back, and she says, "Okay, this is what's going on." The cops come. The East Fishkill cops, because we lived up in Dutchess County, they come. They come knocking. She goes downstairs to answer the door for them. I hear footsteps coming up the steps. I hear a police radio going off, so I know that the cops are here and they're coming. Cop knocks on the door. When I heard her coming, when I heard the female cop coming, I unlocked the door because I knew it was the police. She knocks on the door. I said, "It's open. Come on in." She comes into the bathroom, the cop. And I explained it to her. I said, "My daughter was terrified. And she refused to stop yelling. So I took my daughter from her and I came in the bathroom and I locked the door." Okay. Later on, down in Internal Affairs, years later now, when this whole thing is going on, he was trying to set me up. Oh, he barricaded himself in the bathroom. You know what a barricaded person is? In law enforcement jargon?
No.
A barricaded person is someone who has locked himself into a position within an enclosed building or bedroom or whatever,
right,
and is refusing to open the door for the police. Right. Okay? When the police are saying, "We're here now, come out, talk to us." No, I'm not coming out. And then usually it's something to the effect of, "I have a gun or I have a hostage."
Right.
And if you try to make entry, if you try to force entry, someone's going to die. Either I'm going to kill somebody else or I'm going to kill myself. That's a barricaded person. A guy who
you opened the door as soon as the cops came. You heard them. Right. You opened the door. You didn't, give them any issues or anything like that.
A guy
and
who
what was
the
it?
Bathroom and locked the door because the kid is afraid and mom won't stop screaming. That's not a barricaded person. But when they're trying to set you up to have psychological problems, they know the police jargon to use in the reports.
Yeah, because the word barricaded, it really does sound a lot more like, really. But what was the end result of that? That police incident there when the police came?
She calmed down immediately because she knew that, I'm a cop and you could really mess up my career by playing these kinds of games. So what she said was, "Okay, no, it's all right. It's okay. I don't want to press charges. I'm not looking to do anything. I just called and, I hung up. I didn't I didn't really want to do all this. I called, but I hung up on the phone call because it's not that big of a deal. And then the cops left. The cops told me, look, why don't you just go somewhere else for the night? I said, no problem.
Wow.
I went to my parents' house that night.
Wow.
And that was it. That was the only time that the police, the family court, anything had ever been involved. And it was nothing but a report that they wrote. She said this, he said that. He left for the night and went to stay at his parents' house. And that was the end of that.
Now we got, and we're going to get into more details on that actually on the next episode.
Right.
And we have 5 minutes to go. So I want to stop you there and go through some stuff here. This, guy Danny Sullivan.
We didn't get into the depth too much, so I guess we'll have to post.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, really quick. I know this. We have 5 minutes here before we hit an hour. Danny Sullivan. He's been reaching out to me about this, and I said, yeah, he wants to ask some questions. He wanted your thoughts on Ricky DeVito, Chris Hutter. Is that how you say it? Luis Venturino. I want to know his thoughts on the 50A law. What does that mean exactly? I'm not sure. I don't know. And first, what about the officers? Why is he naming those officers? Do you know anything specifically about them? Something stands out?
I know them all very well.
What's up with those guys?
What do you want to know about them?
What do you want to know, Danny? Exactly. I don't know if he thinks highly of them as, what is it that you want to know? Well, while he writes that, what is the 50A law? What are your thoughts on that? What is it, and what are your thoughts on that?
To be honest with you, I'm not even sure. So I would need him to explain that to me too. I'm not.
The
50A law. Flat out, I don't know what it is.
Are they good cops or bad cops?
Oh, they were great cops.
They were great cops?
Ricky and Chris Hutter were great cops.
So
Louis, he's another case.
What do you mean, Louis was? Yeah. What, Danny? What is it that is specifically? Is anything a question that you want to specifically know, or a comment that you have about these officers? Anthony's saying that as far as he knows, Ricky and Chris were great cops. Is there something you want to say specifically? I don't know, but in the meantime, anyway. Before we got, I guess 3 minutes, maybe you could pick up next week on that deposition. What was there specific on the deposition that you wanted to mention? Is there anything that?
Yeah. So what we, I kind of didn't realize how fast time was flying, or I would have stopped talking about my own situation. I had planned to digress from that anyway, but it didn't happen. So we'll have to pick up with it next week. We're going to talk about. I have some things to say about the beer party issue.
Tell me a little bit about the beer party, and this is the 4th precinct.
Yeah, I could probably get through that in a couple of minutes. All I really had to say about it was, he was accused of hosting a beer party that supposedly lasted 3 tours, which equals 24 hours. So he's supposed to be this 24-hour long beer party. Then, I was never present for any such thing. He denies it, and I'm not going to sit here and say no, it actually happened. I don't know that it happened. But what I was going to say about the environment in the 4th precinct when I worked there is that it was essentially somewhere between a social club and a frat house. I mean, he wanted to be the police commissioner so bad that he was trying to curry favor with the troops, and he had effectively issued a stand-down order to all supervisors that worked underneath him, lieutenants and the sergeants. There was no discipline.
What does that mean?
Whatsoever. Now the cops weren't they weren't bad guys. They weren't crooked cops or anything like that. But we lived like firefighters. We wanted to sit around the table and have a huge family-style meal and crack open bottles of wine. Well, that would happen.
While on duty?
Yeah. If we wanted to smoke cigarettes in the precinct, that would happen. If we wanted to disrobe and lay out and take a nap, that would happen. It was like a social club. Now, I was out in the street making arrests, but, this was probably more the senior guys that were taking advantage of this kind of an environment at the time. A lot of them are retired now. But,
now I would imagine that would affect response time and police presence on the street.
It may have. I don't know. I don't really know, to be sure. To be honest with you, but he was giving out overtime like candy. Details that was supposed to be 4 hours, he was making them 5 hours just to make people happy, just because he wanted people to like him. He'd walk around sweeping the precinct, chit-chatting with the cops, and he was just trying to be, that beloved leader,
cool guy.
But he was doing it the wrong way. He was
like the cool teacher that everybody likes.
We lived. It was
or
a
the cool
firehouse.
parent.
There was a firehouse next door, and it was probably the only place in the country where the firefighters were jealous of the cops the way they had it, because it's usually the other way around.
Right.
You know,
50A law is a cop's background and all reports made against them. Why did the commissioner block them from being allowed to the public? I would imagine what it means by.
I don't know. That sounds like something.
Meat Whistle is a way best cop in Yonkers. I'm not sure what that means.
I know what that means, but I'm not going to talk about it.
It's similar to a FOIL request, right? And so, do you know anything about that 50A law? Why was it blocked?
I know that's something that came into play after I had already been put out of work, and with everything that I had going on, it's certainly not something that I was keeping tabs on, so I can't really comment on it.
Brian Papas is no good either.
Brian Pappas is a phenomenal man and police officer. He's actually a captain now.
I don't believe they are good cops at all. You know what I say is this. I don't ever take away from people's experiences and their how they feel about things. So that's how they feel. That's their experience. I just don't believe it because that's what somebody feels. Also, you know what I mean. I always have my own opinion based on my own interactions with people and my experiences, right? But I don't like not validate people's experiences or feelings, or if that's what they believe. So if that's, maybe had some kind of issue there with them. And, I don't know them. I don't know those officers, you're saying they're great officers. He obviously doesn't think so. And I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. We can agree to disagree. Paperwork speaks for itself. And what do you mean by that, Danny? I mean, be a little more detailed. I'm not sure what, maybe you want to give some background or something, maybe, because I don't know. And would you know anything about what they're,
I don't know anything. I don't know what this guy's talking about. And, vague comments like that from
DJ OP better chill out. Vinny Lewis. Would you speak up if you know that a cop put drugs on a person that was arrested?
1,000% I would.
Yeah, so I guess, maybe he had an incident like that where, he's saying maybe some drugs were planted, and look, Yonkers police, I do support the Yonkers police. Some people say, Freddie, listen, you have to support the Yonkers police. They have a tough job, and is every cop good? I'm sure that's not the case. And that's in everything, whether you're teachers, as firemen, whether you do what I do, you're a businessman or whatever, there are always bad apples in the batch, so that's why I never take away people's experiences, whatever, how they feel. But, I don't want to generalize, I, for the most part, have a good feeling toward the police. We need the police, but there definitely needs to be, I think, a little tighter police community relations, I believe. And not to say that the cops are bad, they're not doing a good job. The Yonkers police, I think they're doing a great job. But I think that, we need to kind of get rid of that, that sentiment, you know what I mean? Because I think that's still somewhat out there, among people. And, we have to figure out why and how do we get past that, right? Where, people don't feel like that, or, maybe it's true. Maybe drugs are not being planted by anybody, or just in general, people don't think that cops are bad, because some people think that. Some people just think all cops are bad. F the police, that's just how they are. I don't subscribe to that ideology, that, way of thinking at all. I know people that police officers, very close people to me, and I understand, I don't want to say I don't understand, but I know what, from what I'm told, what, guys deal with on a day-to-day basis, man, it's a lot, you know what I mean? And, I don't know if I could do that, although I thought I wanted to.
Ricky and Chris, they were definitely of the old school breed. They were very tough, no nonsense street cops. They were not guys that you wanted to start a fight with. You were going to have a bad night. Right. But they're both really, really great guys, and they both had very distinguished careers. So, I mean, if you want to throw out some sort of specific accusation, then, right, then do it. But don't just say, that they were bad cops. They weren't bad cops. They were great, right, guys, and they were great cops. Yeah. Well, Louis Venturino's a punk, so him, I have no problem, throwing under the bus because he's a dirtbag. but the other two were great.
Well, I welcome anyone to send me their stories, and if they even want to come on and talk about it, even or even call up or join in, and mention some stuff, or just reach out to me and talk to me directly about an incident they had with police or anyone. I welcome them to come on here, and let them speak their give their story, give what happened or whatever, talk about it, because I know there are people out there that have stories, and I've heard stories from people I know and stuff, and some of it I believe, and we're talking about before, I'm talking about the 90s, right? Back then, and some of it I definitely believe it, but I don't know if that's the Yonkers police anymore. I know, like you mentioned, Chucky Gardner came in there, did a lot, like you said, he handed Mueller a well-trained puppy dog, and a potty-trained puppy, you know what I mean? So definitely there's been some real changes that have happened. And so shout out to the Yonkers police. But again, Danny, definitely, we love to hear your story. You can even be more detailed. We'll definitely talk about it more on the podcast, at a later date. But anyway, Anthony DiMaggio, former Yonkers police lieutenant, 15-year veteran, wrongfully terminated. Wrongfully terminated,
Let me just say, I can't believe how fast an hour passed tonight. I really
it's an hour and 5 minutes and 56 seconds, actually.
Yeah, so I was definitely planning on getting to a lot more of this deposition, and we will definitely do that next week. We'll just jump right into it, right from the bat.
Absolutely. So let's do it again. We're set up for Friday. We just do this Fridays at 8 o'clock. So join us next week, Friday at 8 o'clock, and we're going to go right into the depositions, go into some details. Anthony DiMaggio will be going over. You have a copy of it there. You'll be reading it. And then if we have time, because like you said, the hour goes by so quick. If we have time, we may get into more details on the situation with some of the text messages and how they use the family courts against you, which that happens a lot. So I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in this, whether you're a police officer or you're not. If you had trouble with family court and somebody's used CPS or the family courts against you, you're going to want to listen and watch that show next week at 8 o'clock. I know it's happened to me and it's happened to a lot of people. So make sure you join us next Friday. Anthony DiMaggio, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you joining. Again, this is part 4 of the Anthony DiMaggio interview, folks. And if you missed the other ones, go on the page, check them out. They're doing very well. From the most viewed podcasts that I've had on there. So they really like you, man. They like you. They like what you're saying, man. Keep it up. Anthony DiMaggio, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it. Have a good night. Take care. That was Anthony DiMaggio again, 15-year Yonkers police veteran, was terminated, wrongfully terminated, had an issue with another officer who he actually outranked, technically, officially, but there is an unknown rankings, or I should say a secret ranking system that actually exists where that gentleman outranked him. He was a made man, according to Anthony DiMaggio, and he reached out to the bosses, and the bosses got him terminated. So if you miss the episode 1 or interview part 1, 2, and 3, you can go on Basement Politics on Facebook page or on YouTube. Check those out, catch up, and then join us next week for part 5 of the Anthony DiMaggio interview. I'm Freddie Vasquez. This is Basement Politics, folks. I thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. I appreciate the support. I did take down that video with the Yonkers voice. I really don't want to be represented like that. Like, I don't really like that, honestly. Even though I believe I was in the right, I was doing nothing. I was really, truly minding my own business. And, I'm from the streets at the end of the day. Eventually you're going to touch my buns, I'm going to get out. But I try not to be the aggressive one. But I really don't like that type of image. So I did take it down. Apologize to folks and stuff. It's not cool. And I apologize to Top Class Limo because it really had nothing to do with them at all. It was just all circumstances. I just happened to pull over there. He happened to live there. Top Class Limo happened to be right there. He decided to come up to my car because he was already upset that someone had slapped his camera out of his hand earlier because he was being disrespectful to them. Family member just had died, and he's got the camera all in their face the way he had it in my face as I was sitting in my car. I'm Freddie Vasquez, folks. This is Basement Politics. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you on Sunday, taking a Saturday break. Thank you, folks, for the support. Be blessed. Have a good weekend.
Freddie wins.
Thank you, folks. That is your Basement Politics episode for Friday night, September 16th, 2022. Part 4 of the Anthony DiMaggio interview. Check out part 1, 2, and 3 on the page and on YouTube and Facebook. Check it out now.
That's cool and all that, nothing with me now.
I was raised in housing.
Yo, I'm from YO and niggas pitch grams and flip dust and niggas be blowing bogeys on back of the beeline bus. Really young, slow bounce, Mocha Cottage and School Street. The middle of the square was where all of the goons meet. Ashburton, Locust Hill, Warburton, Ravine. Niggas hustle all day, trying to stack up their green. Can't forget about Orchard, Van Corn, and Elm. Yonkers Ave, Chestnut niggas be making the sales. North Broadway, South Broadway, all day. South Yonkers is where you find all of the Oyes, Highland, Brook Charlton, and niggas on Jackson. Team of Vista, Riverdale, all them niggas be stacking. Got shows on Lawrence and the niggas on Post. And all them niggas
Let's get it poppin'.
Harriet McLean and all of them niggas on Caroline. Royal Lab niggas on Crates, tipping them very fine.
5 minutes from the BX, whole team seeing checks, hood now with we next.
I'm from Yonkers.
Home of Mary X on blocks in 06, OBG taking somebody's spot.
I'm from Yonkers.
Come on, hat, we can make it happen. Hop in your whip, we 15 minutes from Manhattan.
I'm from Yonkers.
And all the other bros know we real. Now on 4, exit 5 over the soul middle.
Ready wins. Fatality.
No! I was raised in housing. I was raised in housing.